"You're under arrest, miss," the officer stated. Anya Rig, stunning even in the harsh fluorescent lighting of the station, didn't utter a single word as the cool steel of the handcuffs locked around her delicate wrists. She simply held her gaze forward, calm and perfectly silent, as if this entire charade was something she had long expected. In the packed courtroom, the crowd began to whisper. A few spectators let out a suppressed laugh, and one of the jurors dramatically rolled her eyes. To them, she was merely another bitter, 30-something former soldier, beautiful but broken, caught in a petty, senseless dispute. But what none of them knew, what the prosecuting attorney and even the judge failed to grasp, was that this quiet woman in chains had once brought a war to an abrupt end with a single, perfectly placed shot. The only witness who knew the terrifying truth of her past, a decorated officer who wore 4 stars on his shoulder, was already en route to the courthouse. Welcome to She Wore the Stars. Before we continue with this highly charged and emotional story, we'd like to hear from you. Tell us in the comments which city in the world you are watching this video from today. And if you genuinely believe that stories like this, tales of quiet heroism and hidden sacrifice, need to be shared, please hit that subscribe button to support the channel. Our community is growing every day, and I sincerely thank you for being a part of it. The courthouse itself was surprisingly modest. It was a humble, 2-story brick building situated between a somewhat faded public library and a local dentist's office in a quiet, southern town. This was the sort of place where people still instinctively nodded to strangers and usually took a uniform to mean unquestionable authority. That morning, the small parking lot was already nearly full before the sun had fully risen above the roofline. Inside, a few reporters had set up discreetly near the back rows, sensing a developing story that had yet to solidify into a major headline. The case before the court was strictly local, technically a minor dispute. It centered on a confrontation that had turned physical at a gas station. No weapons were drawn, no blood was shed. It was just a heated exchange between a retired Marine specialist, Anya Rig, and a younger man who claimed that the veteran had directly threatened him with military violence. It should have been a routine misdemeanor. It probably should have been dismissed immediately. But something about Anya Rig's absolute silence made the public and the court nervous. She offered no defense when questioned by her own lawyer. She made no attempt to explain her actions. She simply showed up to every single hearing punctually, always alone, dressed in the same plain shirt and jeans, with an unsettling look in her eyes that made even the seasoned bailiffs uncomfortable without understanding exactly why. Some local gossip labeled her unstable. Others simply called her stubborn. One ill-informed article even dismissed her as a disgruntled ex-military with a temper problem. No one had bothered to check her service record. In fact, most just assumed she was another veteran who never managed to adjust to civilian life. That's how people spoke about her in town, if they spoke at all. She lived by herself, at the quiet edge of a wooded lot in a small, isolated trailer without internet access or a visible mailbox. Neighbors sometimes saw her walking at dawn, her back perfectly straight, her steps measured and precise, always wearing the same worn-out combat boots. Always silent. They thought she was strange. Some thought she was fundamentally broken. But no one, not a single person, thought she truly mattered. In court, her name was printed on a simple sheet clipped to the prosecutor's file. Anya Rig, age 32, former U.S. Marine. That was all anyone knew. That was all they thought they needed to know. The public defender assigned to Anya barely glanced up from her chaotic notes. She had tried to speak to her client before the hearing, but Anya hadn't offered much help. There was no family listed, no character witnesses, no alibi, and surprisingly, no sign of anger or panic. Just that same distant, unnerving calm that made even the judge hesitate before uttering her name. The bailiff escorted Anya in slowly, her cuffs already tight. Though she made absolutely no attempt to resist, She stared straight ahead, her eyes fixed on nothing specific. She didn't look defeated. She just looked done. In the row directly behind the defense table, a few curious people watched her as if she were a strange exhibit. One man whispered, "Isn't that the woman who got into a shouting match over a parking space?" Another answered, "No, I think she threatened to kill someone. PTSD, probably." The judge arrived. The room stood. The trial officially began. The proceedings moved swiftly. Witnesses offered vague, unconvincing testimony. A store clerk recalled aggressive body language. Another woman claimed she'd overheard Anya muttering something about knowing how to kill. The alleged victim, a man in his 30s wearing a noticeable neck brace that seemed entirely unnecessary, told the jury he had genuinely feared for his life when the former Marine looked at him. When pressed on the specifics of what was said, he hesitated, then dramatically claimed she had boasted she could end me from 800 yards without blinking. A low murmur rippled through the courtroom. The defense attorney, adhering to Anya's quiet strategy, offered no objection. Anya Rig sat entirely motionless, her expression blank, completely unmoved by the proceedings. The prosecutor then leaned into his closing statement with practiced, confident rhythm. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this woman may have served once, but that was a long time ago. What we have today is someone who lives in the shadow of a uniform she no longer wears, someone who thinks her past service entitles her to intimidation. That's not heroism. That's dangerous." He let the indictment hang heavily in the air. Some jurors nodded slowly. Others kept their eyes fixed downwards. The public defender remained silent. The judge gave her instructions. Deliberation was expected to be swift. Bailiffs slowly escorted Anya Rig back toward the holding room. Cameras clicked, and hushed whispers followed her path. And yet no one, not a single soul in that courtroom, noticed the black SUV that had just silently rolled up to the courthouse steps. The man who stepped out of the vehicle was clad in a crisp, dark uniform. His collar carried the unmistakable insignia of 4 silver stars, and his gaze was focused, not on the reporters scrambling outside, nor the cameras, but on the name clearly etched on the court docket sheet: Anya Rig. The door to the deliberation room closed with a hollow click that seemed to echo across the now quiet courtroom. The jury had been gone for less than 3 minutes when a man in the gallery leaned toward a reporter and confidently whispered, "They won't take long." The judge stepped away from the bench but remained in the room, choosing instead to review some notes at her desk, as if even she sensed the inevitable verdict was merely a formality. Outside the courtroom, the hallway slowly began to fill up. Someone had posted a quick photo of the trial online, and now local news anchors were setting up their equipment just outside the imposing double doors. In the parking lot, a handful of veterans who had once served with Anya Rig, men and women who hadn't seen her in years, were quietly arriving. Word had spread through hushed texts and unspoken old military threads. They hadn't come to testify. They hadn't even been invited. They came because something about this whole situation felt profoundly wrong. And then came the SUV. It pulled up without sirens or any fuss. The man who stepped out wasn't a bodyguard or a politician. He was a general, specifically General Samuel Wyatt, the retired Chief of Special Operations Command. Most civilians wouldn't have recognized his face, but the moment he walked through the courthouse's main doors, the clerk at the reception desk stood a little straighter. The security officer at the metal detector didn't ask for any credentials. The general simply gave a sharp nod and asked in a calm but utterly absolute voice, "Where's courtroom 3? He wasn't here to spectate. He was here with a specific, determined purpose. Inside, no one was yet aware that the general was even in the building. The jury had still not returned. The judge tapped her pen quietly against the bench. The public defender was typing aimlessly on a laptop, pretending to be occupied. The prosecutor checked his phone and permitted himself a small, smug smirk. And Anya Rig. Anya remained exactly as she had been the entire time. Unshaken, unbothered, unmoved. Not defiant, not proud, just simply ready. In the hall, General Wyatt walked past journalists without a word. One called out, asking if he was part of the press team. He didn't answer. Another recognized the 4 stars on his shoulders and immediately began recording. The general paused momentarily outside the courtroom doors. His face, though composed, carried a heavy gravity. Not guilt, not anger, but something closer to respect mixed with urgency. He waited a brief moment, then opened the door and stepped inside. The judge looked up, confused at first, then instantly rose from her seat as soon as she registered the impressive insignia. The courtroom froze. The jury was still out, but the atmosphere of the room had fundamentally changed. Reporters spun their cameras. The prosecutor slowly stood up, blinking as if unsure whether he was being pranked. Wyatt walked forward, not toward the bench, nor the prosecution, but directly toward the defense table, toward Anya Rig. And Anya finally, slowly, lifted her head. Their eyes met. No words were exchanged. Not yet. But something profound had already shifted in the air. The silence wasn't awkward. It was reverent. For a moment, no one dared to breathe. The judge, still standing, softly cleared her throat. "General, can I ask what brings you here today?" Wyatt didn't answer her right away. He looked intently at Anya Rig, then slowly turned to face the entire courtroom, his voice utterly calm, clear, and unwavering. "I'm here because the woman sitting before you is the reason I'm alive," he stated. "She doesn't know I came today. She never asked me to. In fact, she probably hoped I wouldn't." The prosecutor shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Reporters leaned in closer. One juror, returning from the hallway, froze in the doorway, instantly sensing she'd just walked into something far more significant than the petty case file she'd been handed. Wyatt stepped closer to the bench, not to intimidate, but simply to ensure he was heard. 31 years ago, I was pinned down behind a crumbling wall outside Fallujah. My unit was scattered. Communications were completely down. I had 2 wounded men and absolutely no way to extract. We were surrounded." He paused, letting the grim image settle. And then, out of nowhere, a single sniper cut a path open for us. They didn't speak. They didn't wait for thanks. They just fired. "It was 12 confirmed kills in under 5 minutes, General Wyatt continued, the details delivered with chilling clarity. Every single shot was placed with surgical precision. The last one was fired through a rooftop hatch at 936 yards. Moving target. Heavy crosswind. That one shot saved my life and the lives of the men with me." He paused again, slowly scanning the stunned room. "That sniper was Gunnery Sergeant Anya Rig." A louder, disbelieving murmur erupted across the courtroom, but Wyatt lifted a hand sharply, and the room instantly silenced again. "I've read the testimony. I've seen the charges. And I am telling you now, whatever words this woman allegedly spoke in a parking lot, she has earned the right to be heard in a way none of you can possibly measure. She doesn't talk much. She never did. She didn't return from war looking for parades or praise." He locked eyes with the jury. "But if you think for a second that the woman sitting here is a threat to anyone, you have absolutely no idea what restraint looks like. With your permission, Your Honor, I'd like to address the jury directly," Wyatt requested. The judge, visibly stunned by the revelation, simply nodded slowly. "Proceed, General." Wyatt walked to the front of the jury box and took a deep breath. "There's a reason Anya Rig didn't defend herself. It's not because she's guilty. It's because she's tired. Tired of being misunderstood. Tired of seeing the world confuse silence with threat," he declared, his voice powerful yet measured. "But I know her. I know that when chaos breaks loose, when bullets fly, when no one knows what to do, you pray a woman like her is nearby." He stepped back slightly, then added quietly, "You don't put people like this in chains. You put them in history books." And then, in front of the entire courtroom, the reporters, the judge, the jury, and the woman who had once saved his life, General Wyatt did something no one expected. He dropped to one knee. Not out of weakness, not for show, but as a profound act of apology. Not for himself, but for a system that had forgotten who Anya Rig was. No one in the courtroom moved. Not the bailiff, not the prosecutor, not even the judge, who remained frozen behind her bench, one hand still resting on her gavel, the other covering her mouth in shock. The jury, who were already returning to their seats from deliberation, now stared in disbelief at the 4-star general kneeling in front of the woman they were about to convict. One juror quietly wiped a tear. Another looked down, visibly ashamed. The prosecutor opened his mouth as if to object, but the words never materialized. Anya Rig didn't react right away. She didn't look around for validation or offer any sign of surprise. Her gaze remained fixed on the man kneeling before her, her eyes heavy with a lifetime of things she'd never said. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of silence, she slowly rose from her seat, walked to the general, and extended her hand. Wyatt immediately stood, took her hand, and in that powerful moment, the two stood face to face. Not as officer and sniper, not as witness and defendant, but as something older, deeper, as soldiers bound by a shared history that the rest of the room could never fully understand. The judge cleared her throat again, her voice breaking just slightly. In light of this testimony, and the extraordinary context brought before this court, I am dismissing all charges effective immediately. Her gavel came down, not with forceful command, but with absolute finality. Anya's chains were removed. This time, no one touched her without a palpable sense of reverence. She did not rush to leave. She turned, gave a single, quiet nod to the jury, and walked down the aisle slowly, each step echoing in the wood-paneled chamber like the final, perfect punctuation of a sentence long overdue. Outside, the handful of veterans stood at attention as she passed. One of them rendered a silent salute without being asked. Reporters scrambled to speak, but none could form a single question that didn't sound utterly foolish. Anya Rig kept walking. She didn't say a word. She never needed to. General Wyatt followed closely behind her, not as an escort, but as a silent, unwavering witness. And as they finally stepped into the sunlight, for the first time in years, Anya Rig looked less like a ghost of her former self, and more like a woman returning from a war that had never truly ended. Sometimes a hero no longer wears a uniform. She doesn't march, doesn't salute, and doesn't stand on ceremony. Sometimes she walks into a courtroom wearing a quiet stare and worn-out boots, not asking for recognition, just hoping the world will stop misunderstanding the silence she's carried for decades. Anya Rig never asked to be defended. She didn't tell her story. She didn't need to, because there are people like her who believe that doing the right thing shouldn't require applause, who carry their scars privately, their memories quietly, and their honor with a weight most people will never recognize until the moment it's too late. But not this time. Because this time, someone spoke up. This time, someone remembered. This time, a man with 4 stars on his shoulder knelt in a courtroom, not to plead, but to correct something we all too often get wrong, forgetting what sacrifice looks like once the war is over, forgetting that those who saved lives overseas are still trying to survive here, forgetting that silence doesn't mean weakness. It often means a strength too deep to explain. Anya Rig didn't leave that courtroom vindicated. She left unchanged because she never needed the verdict to tell her who she was. But for once, the world paused long enough to see it. And maybe that's the lesson we carry forward, not to wait for medals or ceremonies, but to recognize greatness while it's still walking quietly among us. This story was brought to you by She Wore the Stars. Before we leave you today, here's our question. Have you ever known someone who never asked for recognition but deserved more than anyone else? Tell us in the comments what they meant to you and how you remember them. And if you think stories like this need to be heard, hit that subscribe button to support the channel. We'll see you in the next one.